Good evening. I call to order this meeting of the Concord Planning Board on Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024 at 7:01 p.m. The Planning Board is convening this meeting by video conference using the Zoom application. This meeting will be recorded for future on-demand viewing. I'd like to welcome everyone attending this meeting and take attendance of members and staff. Rob Almeida.
Here.
Andrew Boardman. Andrew, are you unmuted?
I don't see him.
Okay. We'll see if he will
I think he
join
got
us.
kicked.
I think he must have gotten kicked out. Abby Flanagan.
Present.
Sue Felshin.
Present.
And I think Mark Giddings will not be able to join us this evening. And Elizabeth Hughes is here, our town planner. I'll briefly review our meeting procedures. Each vote will be conducted by roll call. There will be public participation during certain portions of the meeting. Those participating remotely, wishing to make a statement or ask a question during public participation, should use the Zoom raised hand function or *9 on a phone and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, you may unmute yourself in Zoom or use a *6 function from a phone and then speak. When you speak, please address the chair, identify yourself by name, address, and any relevant affiliations, and speak clearly for the meeting record. Comments during public participation are limited to 3 minutes or less, except for extenuating circumstances, such as for those with disabilities, and are requested to be respectful. Answers to questions, unless very brief and fact-based, will be deferred for follow-up at future meetings. The board welcomes written comments at any time instead of or in addition to those made during public participation. We'll now go to the first item on the agenda, and I see that Andrew Boardman has joined us. Hopefully we won't lose you again. And that will be for a public hearing for the definitive subdivision plan of EMS development for improvements of a new roadway and for the creation of 4 new building lots at 80X and 1053 Main Street, parcels number 3730 and 3734. Could the applicant please identify themselves? I see Matt Seppi.
Yes, good evening. My name is Matt Seppi from EMS Development, and my address is 24 Pond Street.
Thanks for joining us. Would you like to make any preliminary comments?
I don't have too much to start off with. I just have, since our last meeting, we've had a coordination meeting with engineering and with CMLP just to finalize the utility pole location that we are planning on to relocate. We've confirmed everything works with the site design triangle, and we are on the select board agenda for April 22nd. We couldn't get all the paperwork from Verizon in time to get on last night's agenda. So that's, we worked on that. And I also had some meetings with engineering associated with the sidewalk. And we had a site meeting and a meeting in the offices there. And based off those discussions, we are planning to still go with our recommendation from the last meeting of ending our paved sidewalk at the end of the paved roadway and converting it to a stone gravel path out to Old Bridge Road.
Great, thank you. So we have received a draft decision. I wondered if there were any questions or suggested edits from any members of the planning board. I think I can see everyone. I had a question, not so much for you, Mr. Seppi, but for Elizabeth. And that is, I know we had talked about the potential for a crosswalk from the end of the gravel area across over Old Bridge Road, to the sidewalk there. And I wondered if it's possible to make a condition that, say after, say 6 months after occupancy of the final lot on the subdivision, if we could request that Public Works would review and consider if that is necessary at that point in time. How would you think about that?
So I had a conversation with the town engineer and assistant town engineer. And I know that Matt also had a conversation with them at the site regarding that crosswalk. And in my conversation with them, the crosswalk in that location does not meet their protocol and their standards. It is considered a mid-block crosswalk. And if a crosswalk were to be warranted, there's a lot of study and detail that goes into putting in a crosswalk. It isn't, just we want to put this here. There's certain standards and things that they go through when a crosswalk to see if it's warranted. And the conversation I had with engineering is that if the planning board feels that a crosswalk is warranted, that would not be basically a permitted location where it is shown on the plans. And they would have to do further investigation on whether it could be moved up the road a little bit to I think it's about probably like 15 feet where the corner is on the opposite side of Old Bridge. But I think Matt also had a conversation with them that as part of the redesign of the Main Street, Baker Ave, Cottage, I think it's Cottage, Old Bridge, that intersection, they are looking at those pedestrian connections and ADA requirements, and it may filter back this far as well. So it may be something that they're already looking at, but where it's currently shown is not in a location that engineering would support.
Okay, so, but is there something that we can do that would say after a certain point in time where you sort of have a normal use pattern established, that Public Works would be, because we've asked, for example, the building department after certain things have happened to come back and review, say, a parking plan. Can we do the same thing with Public Works to make sure that that is followed up on? And as you say, yes, maybe it's in the works, but is there any way that the planning board can influence it to just be revisited?
I think the planning board can always influence things by making a request to Public Works. It would be a little bit more challenging to try and put that type of condition as part of a definitive subdivision plan. The other examples were site plans and special permits where they're requesting relief from parking, and you can condition that use. It's not the same, kind of the same situation with a definitive subdivision plan.
I see.
But I think the planning board can make a request to Concord Public Works and Engineering that that they look at this as part of that larger network once all the homes are constructed and the path is put in, and whether there is a need for some type of crosswalk.
Okay, thank you. Are there again any comments from the rest of the board? If not, I'll ask if there are any comments from members of the public. And I see Andy McClatchy. And Andy, hold on one second, and if you can, yes, now you're unmuted. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andy McClatchy and I'm on a butter on 79 Old Bridge Road. And I forwarded a draft, a petition signed by 27 neighbors requesting reconsideration of the denial of the sewer hookup for the lots in the back. And I know that was forwarded to the commission, and I see that Andrea Solomon is on the call. So I wonder if someone could just comment on that effort to try to save a little bit of the woods back there.
I don't know that Elizabeth or I would. Certainly if Ms. Solomon or anyone else would like to make a comment, they're free to do so. So thank you
So-
very much.
What I, from a jurisdictional standpoint, I can only speak to the planning board's jurisdiction as it relates to the subdivision control law and the site and the subdivision rules and regulations. So the planning board is not in a position to make a request or require an action of the Public Works Commission on something that is solely within their jurisdiction, which is whether sewer mains can be extended or not. And the planning board did ask the applicant to make that request, which has been denied. So under subdivision control law and the board's rules and regulations, they are then required to look at the definitive plan based on what's being proposed, which is on-site sewage disposal, which has been found to meet Title V requirements. That's kind of where where the jurisdiction for the planning board ends. Should the board move forward and approve this, and then the applicant, begins to move forward with the project, and the Public Works Commission, if they were to reconsider it and allow for the sewer extension, that definitely Mr. Seppi can, come back with an amended plan and move forward with that amendment. Definitely, that's a possibility if the commission were to change their denial.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I do believe that Ms. Solomon has raised her hand. If we could unmute her. Andrea?
Hi, hello. So we discussed the sewer hookups at our December 13th meeting, which is when we arrived at the decision to not allow the sewer hookups. So we have not discussed that. I just got the petition in the mail, and I know that Public Works Department received that also, but our commission has not discussed that again. So I would stand by our decision that we made on December 13th. It may end up, even if we discussed it again, it probably wouldn't be until our March meeting. And I'm not even sure that we would address that issue because we already did. So that's all I can say about it, because I can't speak further about a decision that we already made.
Thank you very much for responding.
Although I think, Andrea, you mean your May meeting, not your March meeting.
No.
No worries.
Are there any other public comments? If
So
not,
I did send the board, I got some comments back from Sue with some minor edits. I know I sent that to the board and that was posted. Just to make sure nobody had any questions or comments on those edits.
Great.
Yeah, that's the current draft. So I'm correct?
Correct.
Yes, that we're discussing. All right. So, if, then if I could have, anyone from the board, make a motion for approval. Or I would move then that, the, board, vote on a definitive, on the definitive subdivision, excuse me, in accordance with provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81T, and the Town of Concord subdivision rules and regulations, to approve the definitive subdivision plan application of EMS development for improvement of a new roadway and for the creation of 4 new building lots at 80X and 1053 Main Street, parcels numbers 3730 and 3734. And could I have a second?
Second.
So can I add, it would be and grant the 7 waivers and conditions of approval as outlined in the board's draft decision.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'll second that as presented.
Okay, thank you. And so let's have a roll call vote. We can start with Andrew,
Yes.
Rob Almeida,
Yes.
Abby Flanagan,
Aye.
Sue Felshin,
Aye.
and myself, Linda Miller, yes. So thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Seppi, and best of luck in completing the project.
Thank you, and I appreciate the board's time and effort concerning this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
All right. So next we will go on to a discussion of the recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit with site plan review under zoning bylaw sections 4.2.3, 7.2, 7.7.2.12, 11.6, and 11.8 for a combined business residence use in the floodplain Conservancy District and relief from parking for 14 parking spaces at 166 Commonwealth Avenue, parcel number 2184-2. And again, I see Mr. Falwell. I believe you are representing the applicant. If we can unmute you. I don't know if you have other members of your team you'd like to introduce. If so, could you please do that? And then if you'd like to comment on your updates to the application, we'd be glad to hear that. First, can we unmute Mr. Falwell?
He should be able to unmute himself.
Great.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thomas Falwell, I represent the applicant and the proposed developer, 166 Commonwealth Avenue, Concord LLC, whose affiliated entity, Aris Partners LLC, has the property under agreement with the current owners. By way of update, we met with you, with the Zoning Board of Appeals to make a preliminary presentation on the 2nd of February. Got their input, their concerns, met, as you know, with the planning board on the 20th. Got yet further discussions and input. And as a result of that, we've taken all of the concerns and questions into consideration and have filed last week amended sets of plans, which you presumably and hopefully have, the combined retail and residential plans dated March 27th for Spruhan Engineering. The landscape plan dated March 7th, updated March 7th by Cosmos Associates, and the civil plans again by Spruhan, updated through March 27th. The gist of the, well, let me first introduce the people who are with us tonight. As always, Anthony Gagliardi, who is the upfront man, as it were, for the developer, is here on the call. We also have representatives from Spruhan Engineering who are ready to answer any questions with respect to the plans. Randy Hart from VHB is here. VHB is here, our traffic and parking consultant, as well as I believe Steve Cosmos may be on, the landscape architect may be on. The gist of this is that the plans are substantially the same as they have been since you saw them last, but we have made a number of modifications to them in a large part, and the most significant one was that we have, because of the concerns that were expressed about by both boards and some of lesser concern from your traffic consultant, we actually downsized the residential, the retail space to the point where it now only requires 2 spaces, and we provide 2. So we are no longer requiring any relief from parking with respect to the commercial space in the building. That leaves us only with the request for the parking relief, and it's actually now 12 spaces, not 14, with the downsizing of the commercial space. I was hoping, and Elizabeth, you might be interested. Your consultant is Mr. Gregorio from TEC here this evening?
No, he is not.
Because we were a bit concerned, blindsided, maybe confused by the most recent report dated March 28th from him, and principally because it is a substantial variance with what he said at the ZBA meeting, and the meeting with your board on the 20th. His concerns were, and I've gone back over them, and I actually have them recorded. But with respect to things like the sight lines, they were in overall agreement with those sight lines as shown on the plans, and had no substantial difference, and that they, agreed that they generally meet the minimum. There was the discussion about that parking space on Commonwealth Ave and the possible elimination of that at some point down the road if the town saw fit. But as far as the sidelines are concerned, in terms of what he said at that meeting, he were in substantial agreement with it and had no issues. And basically, he had the same comments with respect to the parking. And I may be actually quoting him. He said, generally, he didn't have any concerns with respect to the residential component required based upon the substantial documentation provided by our consultant, Mr. Hart for VHB, with respect to the information developed by the Metropolitan Area Planning Council in its report of last summer, which cited that the actual real use requirement is 1 space rounded generally in the area, and then also in several projects in Concord, where 1 space per unit. So in what he said at the meeting of the 20th with your board, doesn't seem to line up with what he's saying in the most recent response, and that's some concern with us as to why what he said and the direction that we took as a result of what he said now is at variance with what it appears he's writing in his letter. Wondering if Elizabeth can shed any light on that.
No, I can't.
Well, we could proceed, we'll go through the changes, but I mean, we made these changes in response and based upon our good faith understanding of what the consultant was telling us, and he said at the public hearing with your board on the 20th, and it does not seem to line up with his most recent letter. So we have some serious concerns about that, and why that's the case. I wish he was here to explain himself, but apparently he's not. So with that, I can ask the changes are outlined in my March 28th letter to Elizabeth and the board. As I mentioned, the retail space has been reconfigured to 620 square feet, which then reduces the parking requirement to 2 spaces so that we don't need parking relief from that. What we did in the plans show is that we now have a community room that were provided for the residents, as this is like, could be a condominium, and modified the trash room somewhat so that now reduces the retail space to 620 square feet, thereby eliminating any requirement for relief. So relief only for the residential portions. We made modifications to the parking notes and calculations to reflect the latest design changes and to ensure compliance with the relevant regulations and standards. There were some changes to the retail space, the windows from improved layout, and the building elevations have been updated accordingly. And Palin Sevgi from Spruhan can show you those in particular. We did realign to some extent the proposed crosswalk that goes over to Lawsbrook Road to make sure it realigned properly and didn't interfere with the existing driveway. So there's a realignment of that. And then there's we put the proposed crosswalk back in that runs from the public walkway easement that we will provide that goes along the Neshoba Brook. There's a crosswalk that's been added to that. So those are the changes. They're not substantial other than the change, if you call substantial, the change to reflect the diminution of the retail space, which then eliminates the requirement for the for parking relief. So with those comments, I can ask Palin to show you the changes that were made in the elevations and answer any other questions that she may have. As I say, Randy is here to answer any questions with respect to the parking, and I'd like him perhaps to reiterate the points that he made at the meeting with you on the 20th, with which, as I note, the recorded record shows your consultant was in substantial agreement. So, Palin, do you want to change? Do you want to show your screen and show the changes that were made to the retail space and those elevations, please?
Hi, do you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Good evening. Sure, I can share my screen, but should we have the full presentation or just should we like go over the changes that we have made?
I
I mean,
think,
the board, that you've seen most everything else. I think presumably from time and efficiency standpoint, it would seem to make more sense to what the changes are, unless you want us to go through the whole presentation again.
I think the changes would be adequate. Thank you.
Okay. So this is the new site plan. We have revised the crosswalks. The civil engineer Oliver is on this meeting as well, so he revised the crosswalks according to the codes, and we added this crosswalk back because it's like the idea to continuous of this pedestrian pathway. And this is the new retail space. I'm going to show the reduced size retail space. I'm going to show the floor plan. So the footprint remains the same. As Thomas explained, we reduced the size of the retail space to reduce the parking requirements. And we have added this community room for residents use, like gatherings and any other various functions. The trash room got bigger, and the rest of the plan remains the same. There are 2 residential units on the first floor. The one on the front has a private front terrace. We have lobby, mail package area, elevators and stairways, and indoor bike storage area, management offices, and mechanical room. But there is no change on the second floor and third floor. We have 5 residential units on each floor, and each unit having balconies. And balconies are larger than 25 square feet, and which counts as open space. So there is no change on the roof plan. We are proposing a common roof deck area with green roof gardens for each unit to have naturally connection on the rooftop, and using the advantage from the riverfront view. We haven't changed the elevations much, but since we reduced the retail spaces and enlarged the community room and the trash area, there are some minor changes on the elevations. So I would like to show you the renderings. So this view is from the Lovesbrook Road, overlooking to the proposed structure, the intersection, and the surrounding buildings. So the objective of our project is to improve vehicle access and safety, and also to create a walkable, bikeable environment while also meeting the residents' needs. We also plan to relocate the existing statue at the corner to ensure visibility for both vehicles and pedestrians. And this perspective is from across the street, showcasing the building, green public passageway, and the riverfront on the first floor. And there is also a unit, as I mentioned, with a private terrace. And it is enclosed by a wooden fence to ensure privacy. And we also added the same style fence between our parking lot and the neighbor's parking lot. I'm going to show it to you on the other renderings. So these fences are matching, and the idea is maintaining the consistent aesthetic of the throughout the site. And this view is from the entry exit driveway, and offering the view of the proposed parking lot, signages, structures on the structures, and the fence, the wooden fence that I mentioned. And we have chosen the reddish color, which we also mentioned on the other meeting, to complement the existing structures on the site, as mentioned before. In the foreground, we also have small retail space here, as we said earlier, while residential units on the second and third floors. And from this view, we are showing the rooftop design and residents enjoying the outdoor spaces and their private gardens. And this perspective captures the building from the Commonwealth Avenue, focusing on the retail space at the corner and the second floor overhang that creates a semi-open space for the users. And there's a forecourt front entry and awning at the entrance of the retail space, which are very common features used in this area. And the view showcases the other side of the retail space along the semi-open plaza and the residential units in a closer scale. And right turn on the driveway, and the signage for it can be seen on this scale. And this perspective displays the facade along the Commonwealth Avenue, featuring centrally located main entry to the residential units. A bolder signage band is incorporated to highlight the main entry, which also includes the accessibility ramp. ensuring the accessibility while also maintaining the focus on the retail entry with its distinctive awning and the shape of the entry. On the left is the Green River front is visible, while a new parking lot occupies the right side. And these layouts position the building as a central meeting point for residents and bridging both green area and the parking lot. And this is the final view, depicts the building and the parking lot from the neighboring lots and showcasing the trash room and the residential entry from the parking lot side under the green awning at the spot, which is also matched with the awning at the front storefront. And in summary, our design aims to enhance pedestrian, bikers, and vehicle safety and accessibility while providing green, environmentally friendly spaces for residents and public enjoyment, all while meeting the necessary codes of the town of Concord as much as possible. So we hope you like the changes and this short presentation. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, our team members are also here. If you would like to see the civil plans, landscape plan, or traffic study related plans, they are all here. So we can also share them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like any other time to present anything else or?
I'd like, if I can, Madam Chairman, to ask Randy Hart to kind of reiterate the points that he presented to the board on the 20th with respect to the MAPC parking study, so that we can get that out there again on the record.
Yes, please do.
Well, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Randy Hart with VHB. I'll just the parking numbers, really, we relied on a number of different factors, but I think the most important one is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPAC, data that they have provided. They have been working for a number of years on what's called perfect fit parking research about trying to right size residential parking supply, because it's pretty well known in the region that, many of the residential buildings are well over parked and it's just a sea of pavement, unnecessarily so. And so MAPAC has taken upon themselves to really dig into that and try and come up with rates that would more reasonably, provide the supply that's necessary, not oversupply. And so as part of phase 4 of that research, which was done in 2023, they focused on Metro West communities. The research looked at 36 existing residential sites in 6 communities and found an overall average peak overnight residential parking demand of about 1.05 spaces per unit. Of those 36 locations that were counted for parking, 3 of them were in Concord, the Prescott at Concord, Warner Woods, and Brookside. So there were actual boots on the ground counting, vehicles over the course of the evening. And if you look at the average of those 3, it's exactly 1.0, space per unit. So we have real on, the ground data from this community. And those 3 are, one of them's as close to the train station as we are, but we're closer than the other 2. So this location being so close to commuter rail and the data points that we have suggest strongly that the parking numbers that are being provided are what's necessary. So just wanted to reinforce that statement. If there are any questions, I'm happy to respond as I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Falwell, any other comments or members of your team that you'd like to introduce?
No, I think that sums up the changes and addresses the parking issue. As I say, we've eliminated the one that seemed to have been most problematical with respect to the business, the commercial space. So we just wanted to reiterate the data that was provided to the board to enforce, or rather to justify the spaces that we're showing. As we've said before, each unit will have one dedicated parking space. condominium documents will provide that that's all they can have. Everyone going in there will know that. They'll know they can only have one space. We believe that based upon the factors that Randy points out that will be sufficient. And that there'll be a lot of people who will either have no car or will be relying upon the commuter rail and other modes of transportation. So we think that we have provided the board with the required documentation and justification to grant the parking relief, and hope that you will agree with your recommendation. With that, we're open to any questions that any of the board members may have.
Well, I'll just, I want to thank you, obviously, for all the work that you've done and the improvements that you've made to this application over a long period of discussion that we've been having together. And I did want to open tonight's discussion with my remaining concerns, and you really have highlighted and focused on them. The first of my concerns is the issue of circulation and visibility for pedestrians, bicyclists, automobiles, and other vehicles in and around the property. And I do believe that we can't rely on an approval to remove any parking spaces off of Commonwealth Avenue to improve visibility. That would be up to the select board, and I think it wouldn't be appropriate to make any assumptions on whether they would change street parking for this project. So in that regard, I do think that sight lines are still an issue based on whatever version of the traffic study that you're looking at. A second issue for me is the amount of parking relief. It reflects, as you say, very different, some very different numbers that you are talking about, where we really don't have the same kind of streetscape that we're comparing to in terms of the lack of parking relief, not just in the evening, but there's just a lot of parking during the daytime in this area. And the fact that you, as far as I know, haven't really still accommodated for visitor parking or ride hailing or short-term package delivery in the parking that you have drawn, and maybe I've missed any recent changes there. In addition to the fact that you're asking for significantly more relief than we have ever recommended at the planning board, or that's been granted by the ZBA, at least in terms of a very, a recent history. I can't go back to some of the very early non-parking requirements for various retail establishments in West Concord that predate all of us here on the planning board. And then a third issue I have is really the diminished retail presence that this current plan has. The West Concord Business District is a vital business district for Concord. And this current plan somewhat ignores the intent of the business residential districting and the use patterns that are currently experienced in this area. And I think as a result of the parking constraint, instead of shrinking the total package, you've mostly taken that out of the retail presence. And so I have questions about that. So I would just like to consult with other members of the board regarding what other items they'd like to bring up this evening. And I would ask Elizabeth as well to weigh in with any questions or unanswered issues that might be on the part of the town staff or other information that we're looking for. So
May I address those comments?
well, I was going to ask for other members to weigh in so that perhaps there might be other items that they have to discuss that you'd like to combine rather than ask you to go back and forth with each member, if you don't mind. So are there any thoughts or considerations from other members of the board? I see a number. The first person I saw was Abby Flanagan. So Abby, if you wanted to comment, thank you.
Yes. So Linda, I share your concerns about sightlines, pedestrian car conflict. And I had a question about the renderings versus the landscaping plan. I'm looking at the renderings that were provided most recently, and the corner between the two driveways on the renderings has what looks like completely flat landscaping. But on the landscaping plan, are there trees and shrubs in that open space area? I believe there are. So correct me if I'm wrong about that, but that's another issue that in the rendering, we see that corner is very flat and open. If the landscape plan has both shrubs and trees or plantings there, I think that further diminishes sight lines in between those driveways. My other question is, and this may have been addressed, I may have missed it, but in terms of snow removal, where is the snow going to go? That raises another concern of sightlines of where's that going to be massed on the property with the parking configuration as it is. And then my other question was, in terms of open space, I wanted to get a better sense of the relief requested for open space of the square footage that would be required versus what's there, and the decision to change. It seems as though there's more quote unquote open space on the roof, but that's not really accessible open space or visual open space, I guess I would say. So those are my primary concerns. I share Linda's concern that I see a lot of pedestrian car bicycle conflict still on the property. I am concerned about sightlines, particularly I would like to understand better the plan for that corner between the two, the entrance and the exits. And then snow removal and open space. So I look forward to the comments of my fellow board members, and then if we can address some of those after that, that'd be terrific. Thank you.
Hey, Andrew, I had seen your hand up. Do you have comments?
I just had a couple of along those kind of lines. Beyond simply saying that, we think because of the location, we can have less parking. Are there any other mitigating factors going into it? Like, I didn't see any accommodation for bike parking or anything like that. I was just curious if that was taken into account. There are a lot of documents in there, and I tried to filter out exactly what the final thing was. What's the total? I see the total unit count is 12. I would want to know what the total affordable count is and what the planned mix of units is, because part of the relief, that may be a factor. If it's just one, just the single units, or if there's studios, just those versus the larger units, that may play into it, I would think, as far as, furthering the town's goal of more affordability. With regard to the unit mix and those sort of things, where you're citing local projects that have minimal parking utilization, such as Brookside Square, not minimal, but 1.5 and you have 1, it would be good to know if there are any 3-bedroom units within those things, or if they're literally using 1.5 spaces for every 2 bedrooms. It would be indicative that in Concord that's not applicable. Another thing I had a question of where you're citing the MAPC data, it's unclear based on what's publicly available. There may be more info of, you had mentioned that these are condo units. Do condo units generally come with more parking or less would be a question for how, just how Concord can think about how its parking requirements may not be appropriate, because I think that's more of a question of whether, when considering parking relief, it's not this is all we can fit, but whether the requirement of 2 per unit is too high. And it seems like the local projects have proved that 1.5 spaces per unit may be appropriate, but where so much more parking relief is being requested than sort of has ever been approved, it has to go beyond just what the neighbors are doing. And then I just had a question if anyone had any information about, where the retail space was shrunk to make sure that it could fit on the parking side. If you had any examples where, effectively there were retail spaces that were that small within town, would be really useful, so we could get a sense that thriving businesses can actually operate in really tiny spaces. Because most maps I've seen of retail, and generally I only see plazas and things, but like 1,200 square feet seems to be like the absolute minimum, where bank branches are looking at 2,400. So I just don't know what exactly would fit there, whether it would literally just be an ATM, that kind of thing. And I just had some other similar sightline questions where you had a tree planting on the corner, and you're talking about sightlines, like I don't know if it's large when you plant it, but putting a maple tree in the corner, and then you're talking about taking out the lot to, I just don't know how that affects sightlines and those kind of things. So that was one of my fundamental questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And I see that Sue would like to add to this growing list. Thank you.
I have the same concerns as others. I will raise an additional concern, which I see that there is no conduit proposed for future electrification of the parking spaces that don't have electric charging stations proposed now. But this is frankly, let me say that my major concerns are the sight lines, the circulation on the site, given the lack of a loading space, and the tight quarters for multimodal transportation of cars, bicycles, pedestrians, and so forth. And the very large amount of parking relief requested. I do acknowledge the MAPC numbers, but I personally would be extremely loath to set a precedent that could then be claimed for elsewhere in town without looking at the matter seriously. To do it simply on the basis of a single application, that I feel would be something that the town should undertake more broadly and more deeply. And I note that in point of fact, the board is in train of looking at parking around town in a holistic manner, or at least around our downtown areas in a holistic manner, that this doesn't seem well suited to. Oh, and I will also point out that there is an example of a prior combined business residence development in Concord where the business elements have frequently remained closed, not open for business, no tenant there. And I share the concern about a very small space and wanting to know whether it would in fact be viable. Thanks.
So I think that gives you a bit of a list, Mr. Falwell, and
Bit of a, for sure.
if we want to start, maybe we'll see if we can check some of them off.
Well, I remind you that this is an as right use, the combined business retail. There's no requirement in the bylaw that the retail be of any particular size. It's basically, 20 by 30, I think, I'm not good at math, but 20 by 30, which, there are many retail spots that, and in smaller malls and in other places that, for a small retail space, that's adequate. This, of course, is a concern of the developer. He's going to have to tenant it, and we feel that we can find an appropriate tenant that will fit and thrive in that space. Going back to the beginning, in terms of the sight lines and pedestrian conflicts, I mean, I'd sort of urge you to go back perhaps and review the video of the March 20 meeting where this was addressed and by your consultant and us, in which he found that he had no real problems with the sight lines. With respect to the landscape plan and snow removal, we've said, and we reiterate again tonight, if there's snowstorms that require that raise the height of that result in snow that makes difficulty from a sightline standpoint, we will, and as they've done in other projects by this applicant, that snow will be removed so that there is no sightline difficulty. I believe the landscape plan on that corner, I don't think I may be wrong, but, and I'm not sure if Steve Cosmos is on the call this evening, but I think that the plants that are being shown there are plants that are low height and would not interfere with the sight lines. As far as the open space is concerned, one of our original meetings with Elizabeth many months ago now on this question of open space is that my understanding that this open space requirement is not met anywhere. That it's a number that's in the bylaw, but nobody effectively, no development reaches it. We've got open space on the building, whether it's for the public or the residents. We've got open space on the roof. We've got open space adjacent to the brook, and there's all kinds of opportunities for open space throughout the area, including the rail trail and ride out playground and other places. So we believe that, consistent with what's been waived or allowed in other locations, that we meet the open space, or we have a reasonable argument to get the waiver on the open space, because it's simply a number that is, shall we say, not really economically or practically viable. There are bike racks in the building. There are bike racks provided. In answer to the other question, one of the other questions, there are 3 units are affordable. There's a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. There's no, we're put in the 2 charging spaces there. There's no present requirement that we put in conduit to allow them to be added in the future. If that happens and there's a need for it, it'll happen. We don't feel the need to put the conduit at this point in time, nor is it, we believe, in a requirement. I think I have addressed most of the, in terms of the retail size. I mean, we've been pushed and pulled on this. The retail space that we first designed required, because of the site constraints, required relief. But since the issues were raised about parking on the street and so forth, and that relates to the discussion with respect to the elimination of that space as well. That's why we downsized the retail to a space that doesn't require parking relief. So as far as the number of parking spaces, we've provided evidence. The MAPC study was just completed, is good and hard evidence of what is out there in the real world. Yes, Concord may not have ever granted a waiver less than 1.5%, but you also didn't have the information that was done by MAPC to basically determine what's really required, and their study, and they're clearly, you know, not anybody we hired to put the study together. This is a, you know, as you know, a legitimate, a legitimate agency that studies this, and they produced the study that justifies what we're asking for. And that was not available to anybody else when prior permitting, because it didn't yet exist. The study hadn't been completed, as Randy points out. So I think I've tried to answer the 8 or 9 questions that were proposed. It was there was no loading space, but as we talked about at the last meeting, you know, there's space for if it was a ride share is picking someone up, there's space for somebody to do it without interfering with any resident, or at least any resident for any substantial period of time. If there happened to be a ride share or delivery parcel delivery truck parked in that area that actually doesn't interfere with the getting in and out of the residential spaces, but we believe that there's space on that site to accommodate all of those 20th century uses where we didn't used to have Lyft and Uber and Amazon pulling up every 5 minutes. So, but we have space on the site to accommodate those on a short-term basis.
Thank you. I see Elizabeth may have some comments.
So the only comment I have, and I respect Attorney Falwell, but the project that's before you is not a by right project. Combined business residence is by right if it meets all the requirements. So I want to just clarify that. I will add, as far as the open space, that is correct. The bylaw does allow for the counting of balconies, rooftop gardens, and that area. And there has not been a combined business project that can meet what is currently the requirement in the bylaw, which is, you know, I think it's 50%. I don't have it in front of me. I can look it up, but it's
an untenable number.
Most of the time it's an untenable number in the village and commercial districts. So I did want to state that.
Elizabeth, I do understand it's an untenable number, but it's also interesting. I wonder if, you know, I don't think I really need this information. I was going to ask how comparable it is to other projects in terms of the lessened amount, but on second thought, I don't need that information.
If there are no additional comments from the planning board, perhaps we can move on to take public comment. If anyone has public comment, appreciate if you'd raise your hand. I am not seeing any. Okay. There are many specific issues here, Elizabeth. I don't know if we are ready to ask the applicant to go back and address some of the traffic issues that have come up in this recent report in terms of any written discussion that we would like to see, or if we should make a summary of our issues and concerns and forward that on to the ZBA. Do you have a suggestion of that, or would anyone from the board like to weigh in on what our next steps should be?
Well, it seems, Elizabeth, go ahead.
No, go go ahead. I mean, it's, there's, the planning board is making a recommendation to the Board of Appeals. There's been a lot of conversation and there still seems to be some items out there, but I can, the planning board can at this point forward the comments that they've made tonight, forward those to the Board of Appeals, and then, the applicant can provide additional information to the board to advance, the project forward. There.
Is it gonna,
there's- Go
if I
ahead,
might
Tom.
ask, Elizabeth, is there going to be an opportunity for Mr. Gregorio to weigh in here to enlighten us as to how he said one thing at one point in time and apparently saying something else now?
So
That's what's-
I'm not gonna speak for him. I mean, I'd
Thank you.
be happy to schedule something to have, a conversation with yourself and Randy Hart with him and to go over some of these things. But, I don't know if TEC, they made, I'm not sure, the plans that just came in, last, Thursday or Friday? From a civil standpoint, I don't know if there's, if there was no cover letter with, from your engineer, whether there were any changes to those civil plans. So, I can't speak for, the consultant. I'd be happy to, facilitate a conversation and to go over those. But I think right now it is entirely up to the planning board whether they wish to provide their recommendation to the planning board or see if the applicant would like to, have further conversations and then after this meeting and then come back. So those are kind of the two options for the board.
Well, it leaves us with no opportunity to understand what changed. I mean, I've listened.
Well, so
I've
the
lis-
planning board, as part of their recommendation, can recommend that the Board of Appeals is the permit granting authority. So, if the planning board, wishes to forward their recommendation to the board and recommend that, the Board of Appeals consultant go to a meeting and have the conversation with, the applicant and the board for, the Board of Appeals to flesh out these remaining issues and concerns, that is also an option.
I think it would be a good idea if we had an opportunity to have a conversation with perhaps us and Randy and your consultant, because I spent some time today listening to the recording for the 220 meeting, and and I hear what he said. I heard what he said, but it's not consistent with what he's saying now. And it might be beneficial if we could have a conversation with him to try to figure out, what changed and what's the issue and how come he agreed with it. And there's been no change with respect to the residential aspect of it, but he apparently in his comments on the 20th of February appear to be diametrically opposed to what he's saying in his letter now. And we have a lot of time and energy, as you know, in this project, as has the board and as you have you and town staff, and we'd like to bring it to fruition. And this looks to be like the largest issue, and it's pivotal information that there may be some answer to that is not apparent. So if you could facilitate, I'd ask if you could facilitate a discussion, maybe a conference call or something, and soon, so that maybe we can understand this better. Because it's really the parking, the residential parking relief is really the key to this whole thing.
So what I had been going to say previously was that I do see the residential parking relief as the critical issue. And as a member of the planning board, I myself am not comfortable with setting a standard based on one project and without looking at things in a larger context. Other members of the planning board may disagree, but I myself don't see a need to spend more of the applicant's time before the planning board when we might give our recommendation to the ZBA in order to move things along on that basis. But others may feel differently.
But I'm concerned that your recommendation to the ZBA may not take into account the variances in what was said and what is written by your consultant.
What I am saying is that even if our consultant said that he considers relief down to the level of pretty much to one space per unit to be reasonable based on the MAPC numbers, I, as a planning board member, am not comfortable setting that precedent in this manner without looking at things in a larger context for the town of Concord.
And I thought, as you pointed out, the planning board is in fact looking at the parking issue throughout town and have been working on it.
Exactly. And I would want us to complete that process.
Puts us in Never Never Land in the meantime.
Yes, it does. And I'm sorry about that. But that is how I feel it is my obligation to serve the town.
I think you would also have to look at what is an interesting study, is an academic study. And I think if you looked at zoning broadly in this area, I can't think of one town that has actually adopted one unit per, one parking space per dwelling unit. So I think that we would be not only ahead of ourselves, but we would be ahead of everyone else. And over time that may be adopted, but to adopt it in this one instance where it's not, we can't support it with any general practice, just one study, I think would be also, I don't think that's enough to substantiate a leap of faith in one instance when we haven't made a more comprehensive study on our own. I have not many instances where one study is shown to be infallible and is adopted widely. So we have, I think, a bit of understanding to go from our current level of 2 units to have that. That's pretty dramatic. So I would concur with Sue, and I think we can make that understanding to the zoning board that the planning board is not ready to change zoning until we change zoning. Not when that's we have established zoning, we go by that, and I don't see that in this instance there's anything that merits that we change zoning by fiat.
We're not asking you to change the zoning, we're asking you to, based upon the information provided, grant relief from parking, which is in the bylaw.
Yeah, and we have granted relief by parking, but not to this extent.
I understand.
So I think, Elizabeth, there are probably a number of things that we would want to put in a letter to the ZBA if that is where we are. Do you think you have enough information from tonight's discussion to move forward with a draft of that?
I think Heather and I will be listening to this video over a few times to draft something. I would ask that at least one member of the planning board review that draft letter before sending it to the Board of Appeals. To Mr. Falwell's request, I'll be happy to facilitate a meeting, with TEC to go over the comment letter. However, that will not happen until probably next Friday. I am going out of town Thursday through Tuesday, so I won't be back until Wednesday, and Friday is currently the only day I have open.
Mr. Hart has a question if the board would allow.
Yes, certainly, Mr. Hart. If we could unmute Mr. Hart, or if he could unmute himself.
Thank
And I
you,
hope-
Madam Chair. Greatly appreciate it. I just want to make sure that you fully understand the site distance situation before you craft a letter to the zoning board. So this project does not create a site distance issue. The driveway is there today, and it's in a format where it's combined as one wide open curb cut with the adjacent bakery. So there's zero delineation, there's no signage, there's no striping, nothing, just a sea of pavement. And it's sort of the wild, wild west in terms of where you're headed into which site. So it's an existing condition. There is one on-street parking space that has visual impacts on the bakery, even more than us, because they're closer to it than we are. It has a visual impact on us. That parking space should be eliminated today, regardless of where this project goes forward. Not only for our site, but for the bakery site, because it's problematic to both. The peer reviewer acknowledged the fact that we are improving the driveway as part of this project. We're separating the two driveways, number one. We're creating delineation, signage, and striping, and separation between the two that doesn't exist today. So we're doing everything that we have in our power to do to fix the driveway to the extent we can. But I would strongly suggest to, the selectmen today, forget about this project, that one parking space be eliminated to open the sight lines for the existing problem that exists. We're not creating it. We're trying to fix it to the extent we can, but we only have so much power in that regard. So I just wanted to make sure the board understood that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, did you have?
So my only comment is I agree in that one, there is a driveway in that one location, but for this site, it's a different use, it's a different intensity of use, but there's also numerous driveways where people pulled into the gas station and pulled out in a different location. And so while I understand there's lots of driveways, it is a complete redevelopment of the site, and it is a different use and a different pattern of use as well. So, but to Mr. Hart's point about that one parking space, this would be, as the board discussed in the previous application, this would be something that has that one on-street parking space risen to a level where, if the board wishes, I will also put that forth to engineering and the traffic management group for consideration, because he is correct as far as that one parking space.
Please do so. Just in your spare time, Elizabeth. Thank you. Well, seeing no additional comment from the board and from the public, then I will.
I still need a volunteer.
Oh,
Well,
Sue, you gonna do all the
Well-
work?
I will volunteer, but it depends on the timing, because I will be gone from Saturday through at least Monday week, maybe, yeah, so that's a great deal of unavailability. So it depends on how quickly you want to get this done, Elizabeth.
I'm here next week, but not the week after, so I'm happy to.
So I won't be able to get to this till next week anyways.
Right, if you need it turned around next week, I can't contribute, but if it could be until early the following week, then I could.
All right, well, I'll work with Andrew if he's around next week.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay. And Sue will be a backup and I will be a backup to both. So somebody will definitely be happy to work with you, Elizabeth. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And we will move on now to administrative business. And at this point, let me see if Miss Allie, yes, is on the line and she is available. If we could unmute her. So Allison Allie has been recommended by the West Concord Advisory Committee for appointment to the committee to fill an unexpired full member term through April 30, 2026. And I've had the pleasure of meeting with her, and I hope you too as well can have the pleasure of having her introduced and just talking a little bit about herself and how she found her way to the West Concord Advisory Committee.
Should I speak now, Linda?
Yes, Allison,
Yes,
thank you so
okay.
much.
Hi, everybody.
Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in West Concord Advisory Committee and your interest in what the planning board is
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
as well. Thank you.
Yes, hi, everybody. I timed this well. Linda gave me guidance on when to jump in on this meeting, and it was good guidance. My name's Allison Ailey. I have lived in Concord since 1998. I've lived in 5 different homes in Concord, and 3 of them we've either substantially renovated or built. So I have experience with appearing before boards and looking at plans, and it's fascinating to me. And I have my background. I haven't worked as an attorney for a long time because I had kids and stayed home, but I was a real estate attorney for a few years in Boston and went to Northeastern Law School. But I've been living in Concord and watching, you know, one of the reasons we chose to live in Concord is I've said this to people, is we feel like it was one of the Metro West towns that hadn't blown it on zoning, you know, that there's a lot of open spaces and that they're very intentional and things like that. And I've always admired that. And I've lived in West Concord. We lived on the other side of town for our first several years here, but I've lived in West Concord since 2005 on Upland Road and for a long time. And then I now live at 47 Warner Street, new construction, heated and cooled by geothermal. So I've been in touch with a lot of the boards and over the years. And I've been paying attention to the development that's happening in West Concord, which I find exciting, and I've always thought that I'd like to help in some way if I could and had time. And then when the prison was, you know, being sold, that just piqued my interest even more. And so I thought, and someone told me that the West Concord Advisory Committee had openings and were looking for people. So I learned about them, and I like their mission, and I've been to a meeting, and I appreciate how the planning board is trying to figure out how to utilize and make sure we're not duplicating efforts over here, and we're helping streamline your process and making it clearer for people who are going to build in West Concord. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's sort of a synopsis.
Okay, are there any questions for Allison? If not, then I think there are, I don't know, Elizabeth. I'm not sure if the other appointments are for full or positions or not. Do you have the exact details?
So for West Concord Advisory Committee, there is also Linda Ferrari. She filled an unexpired term, which ends at the end of April. So she can be reappointed as a full member. Then there will also be another term expiring at the end of April. And Gregory Dorothy, who was appointed as an associate member, he would be available to be moved up to a full member as well. So they'll finally have, you know, all their full members filled, and once again they'll have 2 vacant associate positions. But
Okay.
So
I'm actually confused by that, Elizabeth. It sounds like there will be 2 full terms available as of April.
and there's a current vacant a vacant full unexpired full term as well currently.
I see. So should we be recommending Ms.
think
Ailey for a full term to fulfill an unexpired term, or should we move to recommend her to the select board and let the select board decide which position to fill?
It doesn't really, I mean, it's easier if you just make a recommendation that Allison would be to fill an unexpired full member term through April 30th, 2026. Linda Ferrari to be reappointed as a full member for a term to expire it should be April 30th, 2027. And then Gregory Dorothy is a full member for a term to expire in April 30th, 2027 as well.
Well, I move that? No, maybe I don't move that. I'll let Ms. Ailey comment.
I was going to ask, so the terms are 3 years.
Yep.
And you're allowed to serve 2 terms?
Correct. But if you fill an unexpired term, that does not count towards your 3-year full term 2 memberships.
Oh,
so
okay.
you could do more than 6 years.
But that would
Okay.
be up to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's up to you.
okay, so Sue, you've made that motion. And do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, then we'll vote by roll call. So Sue,
Aye.
Andrew,
Yes.
Rob.
Rob
I'm
has
sorry.
no sound.
Rob needs to unmute
Can you use
himself.
sign
You
language?
can't?
This is yes and that's no.
No, you can't use sign language. So,
Dang.
yes,
Okay, now
very
I can
well.
unmute myself. Sorry. I was not able to unmute myself, but yes.
and Abby,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So Allison, thank you so much, and we hope you enjoy whatever the term is. And we'll
Thank you.
pass this on to the select board.
All right,
So thank
thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you so much. All right, so now we will have general public comment, which is limited up to 15 minutes with no more than 3 minutes allocated to any one speaker. And I will look for raised hands to see if anyone has an item they would like to discuss with the planning board tonight. If not, then we will move on to another administrative item, which would be all town meeting and feedback from the public hearing. Seems like it was so long ago, doesn't it? So are there any issues? I think maybe Elizabeth, you can bring us up to date in terms of what is going on the consent agenda and what will be on the regular agenda. for
So
town
the
meeting?
town moderator has let us know that Article 36 and 37, so the floodplain conservancy district and the housekeeping bylaw will be on the consent agenda. I have the change to the presentation from the public hearing to town meeting is just to add the motion slide as the second slide and as the last slide. So those will be sent into TM submissions, and in case they get pulled off the consent agenda, they'll be ready, teed up for you. And then Article 34, the town moderator intends to, as a high interest item, schedule that for 7:15 on Tuesday, right? Is that right?
Right.
Yes,
Mhm.
Tuesday, 7:15 on Tuesday. So that will be the first item up on Tuesday. And
And I assume, Elizabeth, though, I don't know if it was stated that then 35 would sequentially follow? Or
She-
could it
she did
possibly be
not-
at a
she did
different
not
time?
s-
She didn't
she didn't say. But
Okay.
so the coordination meeting
Is the 12th or
is,
something?
yes, is Friday the 12th, which that's where, you know, we have a conversation with the town moderator about how long board members feel they need for their presentation. So we're gonna request for Article 34 the maximum time she'll allow. And Andrew, I don't know if you have any thoughts on how long you think you need, and I'll make that request.
However long it took during the public hearing, that felt fine. I don't want to
Okay.
go
Okay.
overboard.
Okay, so we'll figure that out, and I'll make that request on the 12th.
Now, I did get a couple of bits of feedback about Article 35 outside of the hearing. I don't know if I should pass that on tonight or not. One was a comment from a member of the public, well, a continued discussion about whether we really want to have duplexes in residence B when they could be $2 million houses that would not be in walking distance of the town center. But I think you covered that well, Andrew, that this is in fact a price point which is shockingly useful in the town of Concord to young professionals, and we can't possibly have enough housing if we only build within walking distance of the town center. He brought up an actual example of somebody building a duplex in Newton where the combined price is over $4 million, and they're not small, but then none of the houses that people are building at market rate are small. And then I got a second comment asking, what is the interaction between duplexes and accessory additional dwelling units? Could we, I think this is a question for Elizabeth, if somebody built a duplex, could then one of the owners apply for an ADU as well on the property? I strongly suspect that in Resident C, you'd never manage to wedge that in there under the FAR and other setback provisions and so on and so forth. But reading the zoning bylaw, I was not sure whether you could have a duplex plus an ADU or not. Certainly it's a special permit process for an ADU, and it could always be denied on grounds that it would be detrimental to the neighborhood and or derogate from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. But at any rate, those are comments I received, and so they may or may not come up at town meeting.
Thanks. I hadn't actually thought about the ADU thing at all. So
Neither had I, frankly. So props to Gary Kleiman for asking.
So I did see your email late this afternoon, Sue.
Mhm.
So I'll coordinate with Andrew and get a response teed up for that.
Anything else? Anything that people like to bring up on MBTA? Sounds good to me. Any, I guess, open to public comment at all? Anything that anyone would like to say regarding preparation for town meeting?
Do I get a strike at reviewing our handout for Article 34?
Oh, I'm sorry, I see Linda Escobedo.
Yes.
So let's, yes, Linda.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, for those of you who didn't hear it at the select board meeting, they did decide to include a special meeting for town meeting. And the hearing for that is scheduled for April 16th. Elizabeth, I hope you knew about that.
So I did know about that, but you know, if somebody were to submit a petition article for a zoning bylaw amendment, then the planning board would have to schedule a public hearing, which the town clerk believes would be on April 23rd.
And it would require two submissions for public notice.
Yeah, we're all on it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good.
It would actually have to be a legal notice published in the Lowell Sun, because that's the only daily paper where we would be able to make the noticing requirements. We would not be able to meet the noticing requirements for the Concord Bridge or the Concord Journal.
Yeah, very tight. If it does happen. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for keeping us informed and on our toes, Linda.
Okay.
Okay.
But I can tell you to Sue's comment and the question regarding ADUs. They would not be permitted to have a two-family dwelling and an ADU because under 4222, it specifically states that for the purpose of providing small additional dwelling units to rent in the town that will not substantially alter the appearance of the town, or for the purpose of enabling owners of single-family dwellings larger than required for the present need to share space and the burdens of home ownership. So it, under that section, it specifically states for single-family dwellings.
Right, although there is an or there.
Well, no, a building permit may be granted for one additional dwelling unit in a single family dwelling or detached accessory structure. the or deals with the type of ADU.
Okay, all right, so it sufficiently covers single family only, and we might consider whether that should not in fact be a requirement, but that seems like something not to take. First of all, it's far too late, and second of all, it seems like it would be another case where we should move incrementally and see how things go with residence B with single family ADUs and with duplexes before trying to combine that. So cool, thank you.
Welcome.
Great. Okay, then shall we talk about handouts? And our written report?
So your written report is currently fairly easy. And the board received that in your packet, but at this point in time, all of the motions are that town meeting take affirmative action as printed in the warrant. And whether the board wishes to, in the recommendation, expand on this beyond what was explained in the warrant or not, that's something that the board has done and has not done. So this would be the minimum.
So tell me what this will be used for, in what situation, other than to,
This is a requirement of the zoning act that the board provide your recommendations to town meeting, either written or orally at the meeting for each of the zoning warrant articles. So traditionally, the board has provided their recommendation along with the motion in a written format.
I see. So what would be the advantage of elaborating on this?
There would be no advantage. We've discussed it to death, but we're required to do this by state law. Is that right, Elizabeth?
It's whether you can take the explanation out of the warrant and put it in here, or just rely on people to read the warrant.
I see no reason to make this more burdensome, and we get it all on one piece of paper. I think it's fine, but I certainly would be happy to hear anybody else's views.
Works for me as is.
The highlighted part in the top is that the copy of the board, it said 2023. And then the last two article numbers were incorrect. So I just highlighted them for the board. So if
Oops, I missed that. I read all the
Yeah.
text and I didn't look at the title.
So what I would probably request is that I can send this draft to the town moderator to make sure that she's happy with this draft, and then at the board's meeting on the 16th, the board could vote on each one of these items and submit their report to the 2024 annual town meeting.
Great.
Awesome.
And that way, hopefully we'll all be at that meeting. I know, Mark isn't here tonight, so that will be great. Okay, and then any updates?
So I would ask whether there, or you can have other handouts for each
Other
article if you
handouts.
wish.
Yes, sorry. Yes, I think probably for MBTA that should be something to work on. So I will try and get a draft ready for next week, and then we can circulate that and see if people have any comments on it, hopefully. And then, Andrew, I don't know if you would like to have a handout. I think probably one page. What do you think?
I can.
It's pretty straightforward.
I mean, the only thing that we had discussed possibly putting in a handout was some information related to the issues brought up about the average number of units, or the average, I forget exactly how it was phrased, but the fact that the area is like 2,900 acres, but there's 2,800 units, which brings an average size to over an acre. And that didn't take into account things like Concord Academy and the schools and all those other municipal uses that really reduced the average size. That said, it
I
could
mean,
probably be a slide, and if
yeah,
we
it
could-
might be, just a map of zoning B and zoning C. I mean, just so people,
well,
I don't
that we
hate-
have that's one of the slides already. So the question was just where if
well, I
you
guess I tend to think of, when you go down the line and you pick up all those pieces of paper and you kind of flip through them, maybe people would have something to see before
oh, you mean
it's up in
study.
front, and they get 4 minutes to look at it. And that's all I'm thinking.
That's probably
Is
not a
this-
bad idea,
Yeah.
because
then
then
just-
everyone's comfortable what we're actually talking about, as opposed to trying to figure it out on the fly, Googling it on their phone.
Yeah, especially a map, with colored in different places. It's like, oh, is our house there? That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Are we in that district? I can't remember. It's just like, oh, is he talking about us, or is he talking about somebody else? Yeah. That's the only reason I think
That's a good
that-
idea.
Yeah. Okay. But that's pretty simple, I think, yeah. Okay. Anything else, Elizabeth?
Not on that, no, thank you.
Okay, on other things, liaison reports, or anything going on that you want to update us on MCI Concord, or the various 40Bs, or anything that,
So I can give you an update on the Baker Ave 40B at the Board of Appeals meeting last week. The board went through there's a total of 16 waivers for the comprehensive permit. The board went through each of the waivers and voted to grant those waivers. There is a working draft decision, and the Board of Appeals continued the public hearing to April 11th, at which time they will go through all of the conditions, and then we'll vote on that decision on April 11th. For the Forest Ridge Road comprehensive permit, the applicant has indicated that they are going to look at redesigning the project. And we have scheduled a working session with 1 or 2 members of the board, the board's consultants, with engineering consultants, traffic consultants, architectural consultants, and the applicant and their whole team. I believe that's next week also. So that was the public hearing was opened for that project. It was continued to April 4th. But the applicant has requested a continuance without discussion, so that they can work with the town on a redesign. So the public hearing this Thursday will be very, very quick. The board will open the public hearing and continue it without discussion to a date in May. I just don't remember what the date is. But all of this gets posted on, I think it's May 16th. So that's the update on those two items. MCI Concord, I know that Select Board Member Mary Hartman's on. I don't know if she wants to provide an update on that. I do know that town staff met with representatives of the Metropolitan Area Planning Council about potentially getting their assistance. But it's all still bubbling and churning. Oh, go ahead and unmute, Mary.
I think that's fine, Elizabeth. We still have more, questions than answers. We did meet with MAPC, and it was a very introductory meeting to find out how they can help us. We're actively putting together the advisory board. We're moving along. We got to get used to this. Is going to take a long time, so I think we're going to have to get used to slow answers.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, if I may be a pest, I took another look at section 4.2.2.2, and there's 2 or branches. So you could claim, it looks to me like you could read it as dropping out 2 halves. For the purpose of providing small additional dwelling units to rent in the town, a building permit may be granted for 1 additional dwelling unit in a detached accessory structure. If you take the first branch of the first or and the second branch of the second, or it would be for small rental units only in detached accessory structures, you might be able to make that argument. So maybe we should look at it a little more closely.
We can definitely look at it more closely, and I can get town council's opinion on that. But I can tell you, up to this point, the building commissioner determination is that for a 2-family dwelling, that you do not also get the option
ADU.
of doing an ADU. If somebody were to challenge that, his determination, they can appeal that determination to the Zoning Board of Appeals, who I then would think the Board of Appeals has the ability to look at that intent of the bylaw. So at this time, that is definitely not the intent of the bylaw, and it was not what the planning board put forth when they did amend this. Is there always opportunity to add additional language and clarify things in the zoning bylaw for the what ifs that the unintended consequences? Yes, so that's something that I can look to town council, but currently that is not the interpretation that the building commissioner has.
Well, maybe we shouldn't bother town council at this time. I was not aware that the building commissioner had already made such determinations. And certainly the ZBA would be guided. I mean, it already says intent of the bylaw in the item. So, all right, thanks.
Okay, just in terms of an update, I don't remember if I've mentioned this or not, but the Economic Vitality Committee unanimously supported the MBTA Communities Act. So that is positive. We're continuing some outreach efforts, and we'll be talking with Concord CAN and the League of Women Voters over the next couple of weeks. So that if anyone has missed anything, there's still time. There's still time. So I think other than that, we have some minutes to approve.
Shall I make a motion?
Please do.
I move that the planning board approve the minutes of our meetings of February 6th and February 20th, 2024 as written.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call. Sue.
Aye.
Abby.
Aye.
Andrew,
Yes.
Rob,
Rob, unmute.
he's
Yeah.
somehow,
Well, we have four. That's
Okay.
enough people
There
for
we go.
me.
Yes, yes. I don't know
Yes.
what's going on. It's not letting me unmute. It says the host won't let me unmute.
yes,
I've made you a co-host
our-
like
our
4
new sec-
times.
our new security system. So,
Yeah,
and
so
myself,
it's fine.
Linda Miller, yes. All right, so with that, everyone enjoy the rest of the evening.